The Void Speakers came from the darkness between galaxies. They were not a single creature, but a hive intelligence. Billions of minds connected across impossible distances. They fed on energy, on matter, on life itself. They had consumed countless galaxies before this one, and they were very, very hungry. The first attacks came at the outer colony worlds. Entire planets went silent within hours. The Void Speakers did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply devoured. Commander Lyra Santos stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Unity. It was a vessel built from both human and Kelthanier technology, crewed by members of a dozen species. She had been promoted to Admiral after the fall of the Morthian conspiracy, but she still preferred to be called Commander. Status report. She ordered. Lieutenant Hannah Cole worked the tactical console. 17 worlds have gone dark in the past 3 days. The Void Speakers are moving toward the galactic core. At their current rate of advance, they will reach Volanthos Prime in 2 weeks. Dr. Kevin Park studied the sensor data from his science station. Their weakness is confirmed. The Kelthanier were right. The Void Speakers rely on a psychic network to coordinate their attacks. If we can disrupt that network, we can stop them. But the psychic attacks affect most species, Cole added. The Gethrani, the Vazans, the Morthians. Everyone exposed to the Void Speaker signal becomes confused and helpless. Everyone except humans, Santos said. This was humanity's secret weapon. Something about human neural structure made them resistant to the Void Speaker influence. The Kelthanier had suspected this for centuries. It was part of why the Morthians had feared human-Kelthanier cooperation so deeply. Together, the two species could do what neither could do alone. The Kelthanier had spent 800,000 years developing a weapon that could destroy the Void Speaker central node. But the weapon required time to charge, and someone would need to get close enough to deploy it. That meant fighting through the heart of the enemy swarm. Admiral Jack Morrison commanded the main battle fleet from his flagship, the Dawn's Light. He was coordinating the defense of the outer colonies, trying to slow the Void Speaker advance long enough for the weapon to be ready. Admiral Santos, "We are running out of time," Morrison said through the communication link. "I can hold them for maybe another week. After that, there will be nothing between the swarm and the core worlds." "Understood," Santos replied. Luminous voice, "How long until the weapon is ready?" The Kelthanier Elder appeared on her screen. His glowing form had dimmed over the past few days, the strain of the crisis taking its toll even on his ancient body. "The weapon will be ready in 6 days. But I must warn you, Admiral, the delivery system is not perfect. Someone will need to pilot a ship directly into the central node. The chances of survival are very small." Santos had expected this. She had already made her decision. "I will do it myself." "Commander, you cannot," Cole protested. "You are too valuable. Let me go instead." "Or me," Park offered. "I am just a scientist." "You are a leader." Santos shook her head. "I have been fighting for my people's place in this galaxy since the day we discovered we were exiles. I will not ask anyone else to make a sacrifice I am not willing to make myself." Morrison's voice came through the link. "Santos, I have known you for 20 years. You are the most stubborn person I have ever met. But you are not going alone. I am coming with you. Jack, you are needed here. The fleet can function without me for one mission. Besides, someone has to watch your back." The final battle began 4 days later. The combined fleet of humanity, the Kelthanier, and their allies engaged the Void Speaker swarm at the edge of the core systems. It was the largest battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships on each side. Energy weapons lighting up the void like 1,000 suns. The Unity led a strike force through the chaos, protected by a wall of escort vessels. Morrison's Dawn's Light flew beside them, its weapons blazing at anything that came close. "We are approaching the central node," Cole reported. "Weapon is charged and ready to deploy." Santos could see it on the screen. The Void Speaker Central Node was a massive structure, a twisted knot of organic matter and stolen technology. It pulsed with dark energy, sending commands to the billions of lesser creatures in the swarm. "All ships, focus fire on clearing a path," Santos ordered. "Unity is going in." The escort vessels peeled away, engaging the swarm defenders. Morrison's Dawn's light moved to cover the Unity's approach. But the Void Speakers were not stupid. They recognized the threat and concentrated their forces. "We are taking heavy fire," Cole announced. "Shields at 60%, 50, 40. "Just a little farther," Santos muttered. "Just a little more." Then Morrison's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Santos, they are overwhelming us. I'm going to draw them off. Jack, no. It has been an honor serving with you, Commander. Finish the mission." The Dawn's light broke formation and charged directly at the largest concentration of Void Speaker forces. Its weapons fired continuously, drawing the enemy's attention away from the Unity. The swarm descended on Morrison's ship like locusts. "Jack!" Santos shouted. There was a brilliant flash of light as the Dawn's light detonated its reactor core. The explosion vaporized 1,000 Void Speaker creatures and tore a hole in the swarm's defenses. "Path is clear," Cole said, her voice trembling. "We have an opening." Santos felt tears on her face, but she did not hesitate. She pushed the Unity forward, straight into the heart of the central node. The weapon systems activated, and Kelthanier energy cascaded through the alien structure. The Void Speakers screamed. It was a psychic cry that echoed across the entire galaxy, felt by every sentient being. The central node collapsed, and with it, the coordination that held the swarm together. Billions of creatures suddenly lost their connection to the hive mind. They became confused, disoriented, easy targets for the Allied fleet. The Unity emerged from the explosion, battered but intact. Santos could not believe she was still alive. "All ships, mop up the remaining forces," she ordered. "The swarm is broken. We won." The battle lasted another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Without their central node, the Void Speakers were lost. They were destroyed piece by piece until nothing remained. When it was finally over, Santos stood on the observation deck of her damaged ship and watched the stars. So many had died. Admiral Morrison. Thousands of crew members from every species. The cost of victory had been terrible, but they had won. 1 month later, Santos stood in the great chamber of Volanthos Prime. The council had been reformed. Humanity had been given a permanent seat. The exile that had lasted 800,000 years was officially over. Elder, Councillor Vethaner, delivered the closing speech. His compound eyes swept across the assembly, taking in the hundreds of species gathered in peace. 800,000 years ago, this council made its greatest mistake. We exiled a species for the crime of compassion. We punished them for trying to save innocent lives. And in doing so, we nearly doomed ourselves to destruction. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity did not die in the dead zones. They grew stronger. They preserved the Kelthanier when we had abandoned them. And when the threat came that we had denied for so long, they led the fight to save us all. Today, we welcome them back. Not as exiles, not as outsiders, but as full members of the galactic community. The chamber erupted in applause. Santos felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Hannah Cole, now a captain in her own right. "What happens now?" Cole asked. Santos looked out at the stars through the great windows. "We rebuild. We heal. And we make sure that no species is ever exiled for showing compassion again." Dr. Park joined them, a small smile on his face. "You know, I have been thinking about what Admiral Morrison said before the battle. He called you the most stubborn person he ever met." Santos laughed despite the tears in her eyes. He was right, and that stubbornness saved the galaxy. The three humans stood together, watching as ships from 100 worlds flew past in formation. It was a display of unity that had never been seen before, a display that humanity had made possible 800,000 years ago. They had been exiled for refusing to abandon the helpless. Today, they were heroes, and tomorrow, they would help build a galaxy where compassion was not a crime but a virtue. A galaxy where no one would be left behind. A galaxy that was finally truly united. The exile was over. Humanity had come home. The expedition returned to Volanthos Prime with evidence that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Commander Lyra Santos carried data crystals containing Kelthanir recordings, testimonies from survivors, and sensor logs proving that Morthian warships had attacked the refugee fleet 800,000 years ago. Elder Counselor Vethaner reviewed the evidence in private before the public session. His compound eyes studied each image, each document, each fragment of proof. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time. "This is worse than I imagined," the High Speaker finally said. The Morthians did not simply exile humanity. They tried to commit genocide against the Kelthanir. They have been lying to the Council for 800 millennia. Archivist Tolmec floated beside him, his color shifting through shades of anger and grief. "The Kelthanir were my distant cousins. I grew up hearing stories about their extinction. I mourned them. And all this time, they were alive, hidden beyond a black hole because my own council tried to murder them." Santos placed a hand on the water sphere that housed the Vozan. "They survived. That is what matters now. What we do with this truth is what will define us." The public session was called for the following day. The great chamber of Volanthos Prime was filled to capacity. Species from every corner of the galaxy had gathered to hear what the expedition had discovered. Ambassador Kira Bennett stood ready with the diplomatic team. Governor Samuel Wright had arrived with a larger human delegation, and Admiral Jack Morrison waited in orbit with the United Human Fleet, just in case things went wrong. Vethaner called the session to order and invited Commander Santos to present her findings. She walked to the center of the chamber and activated the holographic projectors. The first image showed the hidden station beyond the black hole. "The Kelthanir are not extinct," Santos announced. "They have been living in exile for 800,000 years, just like us. And they have been waiting for this moment." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Santos continued, showing images of the hybrid community, the preserved records, the testimony of luminous voice. She explained the cosmic threat that the Kelthanir had discovered, and the Morthian decision to silence them. Then she showed the recordings of the attack on the evacuation fleet. Morthian warship signatures were unmistakable. The footage showed them firing on defenseless transports, destroying ships filled with refugees and the humans who had come to save them. Inquisitor Jalvex rose from his seat, his reptilian face twisted with rage. "These recordings are false. They have been fabricated by human sympathizers to discredit the Morthian tribunal. The recordings are verified by Kelthanir authentication codes that have not been used in 800,000 years." Tolmec replied, "No one alive today could have fabricated them." Jalvex made a hissing sound. "This is a conspiracy against my people. The Morthians have served this council faithfully since its founding. We will not be accused by exiles and ghosts." Santos stepped forward. "Then explain why the exile records were corrupted. Explain why the evidence against humanity was deliberately destroyed. Explain why your ancestors attacked ships carrying innocent refugees." The Inquisitor had no answer, but he did not need one. At that moment, the doors to the chamber burst open and Morthian soldiers poured inside. They wore combat armor and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. By order of the Morthian Tribunal, this session is suspended, Jalvex announced. Elder Counselor Vethaner and Archivist Tolmec are under arrest for treason against the Galactic Order. The humans will be returned to their exile zone immediately. Vethaner stood tall despite the weapons pointed at him. You cannot do this. The Council has laws. The Council has whatever laws the Morthians decide it has, Jalvex replied. We have maintained order in this galaxy for millions of years. We will not allow a pack of exiled animals to destroy everything we have built. The Morthian soldiers moved to seize the human delegation. Ambassador Bennett activated her emergency communicator. In orbit above Valanthos Prime, Admiral Morrison received her signal. Jack Morrison was a veteran of 100 battles in the dead zones of space. He had fought pirates, navigated asteroid fields, and held his fleet together through crises that would have broken lesser commanders. He was not a man who panicked easily, but when he received the signal from the surface, he felt his blood run cold. All ships, battle stations, he ordered. The Council has been taken over by hostile forces. Our people are in danger. The United Human Fleet consisted of 300 warships. It was not the largest fleet in the galaxy, but it was crewed by humans who had spent 800,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. They were ready for anything. Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from multiple Council species, his communications officer reported. They are asking what is happening. Morrison made a decision that would change the course of history. He opened a broadcast channel to every ship in the system. This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Human Fleet. The Morthian Tribunal has seized control of the Galactic Council by force. They have arrested legitimate council leaders and taken human diplomats hostage. We did not come here seeking war, but we will not abandon our people. Any vessel that wishes to stand with us against tyranny is welcome. Any vessel that stands with the Morthians will be treated as hostile. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, ships began to move. Kethrani vessels, Vazan transports, dozens of species who had grown tired of Morthian dominance over the centuries. They formed up alongside the human fleet. On the surface, Jalvex received reports of the gathering armada. His cold eyes showed something that might have been fear. You cannot win, he told Santos. The Morthian war fleet is the most powerful force in the galaxy. Perhaps, Santos replied. But we have something you do not. And what is that? Santos smiled. Friends. The standoff lasted for 6 hours. Morthian reinforcements arrived, but so did ships from other species. The balance of power shifted back and forth. Neither side wanted to fire the first shot, knowing that it would mean the deaths of millions. Then something happened that no one had expected. A new fleet emerged from hyperspace. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 800,000 years. They were Kelthanir designs, updated and improved over millennia of hidden development. Luminous voice appeared on every screen in the system. His glowing form radiated calm authority. We are the Kelthanir. We are the species you tried to murder. We are the species you tried to erase from history. We have returned, and we bring a warning that you must hear. He paused, letting his words sink in. The threat we discovered long ago is no longer a distant concern. Our sensors have detected it. The entity from between galaxies is not 200,000 years away. It is already here. It has been drawn by the energy signatures of your conflict. While you fight among yourselves, something far worse is coming. The Morthian soldiers hesitated. Jalvex looked at the sensor data being transmitted by the Kelthanir ships. His scales turned pale. This cannot be real, he whispered. It is very real, Luminous voice replied. And you cannot defeat it alone. None of us can. This is why the Morthians tried to silence us. They knew the threat was coming, and they knew they could not stop it. They chose to let the galaxy die in ignorance, rather than admit their weakness. Lefner stepped forward, the Morthian guards too stunned to stop him. Then we have no time for politics or old grudges. We must work together, or we will all perish. Santos nodded. That is what we came here to say. Humanity does not want revenge. The Kelthanir do not want revenge. We want survival. All of us, together. The Morthian soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Even Jalvex seemed to deflate, the fight going out of him. The conspiracy had been exposed. The truth could no longer be hidden. And something far more terrifying than any political conflict was about to arrive. Admiral Morrison watched from orbit as the tension on the surface dissolved. He allowed himself a small breath of relief. The battle for the Council was over, but he knew that a much larger battle was just beginning. The entity from between galaxies was coming, and humanity, exiled for 800,000 years for the crime of compassion, would lead the fight against it. The expedition ship carried a crew of 50. Half were Council observers from various species. Half were humans from the horizon's edge. Commander Lyra Santos had been given joint command alongside a Kethrani captain named Vrixthale. They did not trust each other, but they worked together because they had no other choice. The journey to the Kelthanir Dead Zone took 3 weeks. Dr. Kevin Park spent most of that time studying what little information existed about the lost species. The Kelthanir had been tall and thin, with luminescent skin that changed color based on their emotions. They had been scientists as philosophers, peaceful beings who spent their lives seeking knowledge. They sound a lot like Archivist Tolmec's species. Lieutenant Hannah Cole observed. The Vozans and Kelthanir were distant relatives, Park confirmed. That is why Tolmec was so interested in this case. He felt a personal connection. Navigator Daniel Reed kept the ship on course through regions of space that had not been charted in millennia. He was a quiet man who preferred the company of star maps to people, but he was the best pilot in the human fleet. Approaching the dead zone boundary, Reed announced. Sensors are picking up debris. A lot of debris. Santos moved to the main screen. What she saw made her heart sink. Thousands of ship fragments floated in space, the remains of a fleet that had tried to flee a dying sun. Most of the ships were of Kelthanir design, but mixed among them were other vessels, ships with markings that Santos recognized. Those are human ships, Chief Engineer Maria Vasquez said. Old designs, but definitely human. Our ancestors made it this far. Captain Vrixthal studied the wreckage with his compound eyes. It appears the rescue mission reached the Kelthanir. But what happened here? Why are there so many destroyed vessels? Park examined the sensor data. These ships were not destroyed by the star collapse. The damage patterns are consistent with weapons fire. Someone attacked the evacuation fleet. The revelation hung in the air like a dark cloud. Someone had tried to stop the rescue. Someone had fired on ships carrying refugees from a dying world. Santos ordered the expedition deeper into the dead zone. They passed through the debris field and entered a region of space that should have been completely empty. The old star had collapsed into a black hole that swallowed all light. No planets remained. No stations. Nothing but darkness. There is no life here, Vrixthal said. The Kelthanir are truly extinct. But Park was not so sure. He had noticed something strange in the sensor readings. There was a faint energy signature coming from beyond the black hole, in a region that should have been impossible to reach. Navigator Reed, can we go around the gravitational well? Reed studied his charts. It will take an extra 2 days, but yes, there is a safe path. They followed the energy signature for 48 hours. When they finally emerged on the other side of the black hole, Santos could not believe what she was seeing. A space station hung in the void. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its design was unlike anything the Council had ever built. Parts of it were clearly Kelthanier, but other parts were unmistakably human. "They made it," Vasquez whispered. "Our ancestors made it. They saved the Kelthanier and built a home with them." The station hailed them. A face appeared on the screen, but it was not quite human and not quite Kelthanier. It was something in between. The being had luminescent skin like the ancient species, but its features were more rounded, more familiar. "Welcome, cousins," the being said. "We have been waiting for you for a very long time." The expedition docked with the station and was greeted by a delegation of the most remarkable beings Santos had ever seen. Some were pure human, descendants of the original rescue mission. Some were pure Kelthanier, their glowing skin shifting through colors of joy and welcome. And some were hybrids, the children of both species who had merged there. Bloodlines over countless generations. The leader of the Kelthanier was an ancient being called Luminous Voice. He was one of the few remaining pure-blooded survivors. Over 800,000 years old, thanks to the life-extending technology his people had developed. "Your ancestors came to save us when no one else would," Luminous Voice said. "They defied the Council. They fought through the blockade that tried to stop them. They brought us here, to this hidden place beyond the black hole, where we could rebuild." "Blockade?" Santos asked. "Someone tried to stop the rescue?" "The Morthian Tribunal," Luminous Voice replied, his colors shifting to dark red. "They sent warships to destroy the evacuation fleet. They wanted us dead." Rixthil stepped forward, his compound eyes wide. "The Morthians are one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. Why would they want to destroy the Kelthanier?" Luminous Voice turned to face the Kithrani captain. "Because we knew something they wanted to keep secret. We had discovered a threat to the entire galaxy, and we tried to warn the Council. The Morthians silenced us instead." Park felt a chill run down his spine. "What threat?" "Something is coming from between the galaxies. We detected it 1 million years ago. A vast intelligence, hungry and ancient. It will consume everything in its path. We calculated that it would arrive in approximately 1 million years. That means it should be here in about 200,000 years, Cole said. Doing the math quickly, Luminous Voice shook his head, and his colors turned to a pale, fearful white. Our calculations were wrong. The entity is not traveling at a constant speed. It is accelerating. It will arrive much sooner than we predicted. Santos felt the weight of this revelation pressing down on her. For 800,000 years, her people had lived in exile. For 800,000 years, the Kelthanier had hidden in the shadows of a black hole. And all that time, a cosmic threat had been growing closer. Why would the Morthians hide this? She asked. Because they are afraid, Luminous Voice answered. They believe that if the galaxy learns the truth, there will be panic and chaos. They would rather let everyone die in ignorance than admit they cannot control the situation. The expedition spent a week on the station, gathering evidence and recording testimonies. The Kelthanier shared everything they knew. They gave the humans copies of their ancient recordings, including footage of the original attack on the evacuation fleet. Morthian warships were clearly visible, firing on defenseless refugee vessels. When it was time to leave, Luminous Voice gave Santos a personal message to deliver to the Council. Tell them we do not seek vengeance for what was done to us. Tell them we only want to help. The threat that is coming cannot be stopped by one species alone. We must work together, or we will all perish. Santos took the message and promised to deliver it. As the expedition ship departed the hidden station, she looked back at the strange structure that had been home to two species for 800,000 years. Humanity had been exiled for showing compassion. The Kelthanier had been marked for death for speaking the truth. Together, they had survived against all odds. And now, they would return to a galaxy that had forgotten them and force it to remember. The journey back to Council space was quiet. Everyone on the ship understood the magnitude of what they had discovered. The Morthians had lied. The Council had been deceived. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, something terrible was coming. Santa stared at the stars and made a silent promise. She would expose the truth. She would bring justice to her people and to the Kelthanier. And she would prepare the galaxy for the battle that was coming, whether it wanted to be prepared or not. 800,000 years of exile was ending. It was time for humanity to come home. The great chamber of Volanthos Prime had stood for 3 million years. Its walls were made of living crystal that hummed with the memories of 1,000 extinct civilizations. Here, the Galactic Council made decisions that shaped the fate of billions of worlds. Here, species rose to power and fell to dust. And here, on this ordinary day of the 10,000th millennium cycle, Archivist Tolmec discovered something that would change everything. Tolmec floated in his water-filled mobility sphere, his transparent skin revealing the gentle pulse of his 3 hearts. The Vozan had served as keeper of ancient records for 600 years, and he had never seen anything like this. His long fingers moved through holographic data streams, pulling apart files that had not been accessed in 800,000 years. "This cannot be correct," he whispered to himself. His voice created small bubbles in the water around him. The file was labeled Species 7412. The common name was listed as human. The status was marked as exiled. But the reason for exile had been corrupted. Not by time or technical failure. The corruption was deliberate. Someone had wanted this information destroyed. Tolmec immediately requested an audience with Elder Counselor Vethaner, the High Speaker of the Council. The Kethrani leader agreed to meet him within the hour. Vethaner was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His insectoid body was covered in ceremonial plates of gold and black, and his compound eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. He listened to Tolmec's report with growing concern. "You are telling me that we exiled an entire species 800,000 years ago, and we no longer know why?" Vethaner asked. "That is exactly what I am telling you, High Speaker." The original verdict cited them as dangerously unpredictable and prone to violence beyond acceptable parameters. But these are standard phrases. The actual evidence has been erased. Vethaner made a clicking sound with his mandibles. "Species come and go. Perhaps they died out in the quarantine zone. Perhaps this matter is no longer relevant." "I considered that possibility," Tolmec said. "So I checked the long-range sensors at the quarantine boundary. High Speaker, there are ships in the dead zone. Many ships. And their energy signatures match the records we have for human technology." Before Vethaner could respond, an alert sounded through the chamber. A Kethrani patrol had intercepted an unknown vessel crossing the quarantine boundary. The ship had a crew of 200 beings. All of them were human. Commander Lyra Santos stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the alien warships surround her vessel. She was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Her uniform was simple gray with blue trim, marking her as an officer of the United Human Fleet. She had served in space for 20 years, and she had never seen anything like these ships. "Lieutenant Cole, what do we know about them?" she asked. Hannah Cole worked the sensor console with quick fingers. She was younger than Santos, with red hair and a face full of freckles. "Not much, Commander. Their weapons are powered up, but not locked on us. I think they are as surprised as we are." Dr. Kevin Park stepped onto the bridge. He was the ship's xenanthropologist, a thin man with glasses and a gentle voice. Commander, I have been studying their communication frequencies. I believe I can establish contact. Santos nodded. Do it. Park worked for several minutes. Then the main screen flickered to life, showing a face that no human had seen in 800,000 years. It was insectoid, with golden plates and huge compound eyes. The being spoke, and the translator struggled to keep up. Unknown vessel. You have violated the quarantine boundary established by the Galactic Council. Identify yourselves and prepare to be taken into custody. Santos stepped forward. This is Commander Lyra Santos of the human vessel, Horizon's Edge. We were investigating unusual energy readings and did not know there was a boundary here. We mean no harm. There was a long pause. Then the alien spoke again, and this time Santos could hear something like confusion in its voice. You are human? Species 7412? That is not possible. Your kind was exiled to die. Santos felt a chill run down her spine. Exiled? We have no record of any exile. We have been living in this region of space for as long as our history remembers. What are you talking about? The alien did not answer. Instead, the transmission ended, and the human ship was pulled by tractor beams toward the largest alien vessel dot in the council chamber. Vethner watched the live feed from the patrol ship. He saw the humans being escorted off their vessel. They walked upright on two legs, their faces showing a strange mix of fear and curiosity. They did not resist. They did not attack. They simply asked questions. Why were we exiled? What did we do? Who are you? Tolmec floated beside the high speaker. They genuinely do not know. Their records must have been lost over the millennia. Vethner studied the humans carefully. They do not seem violent. They do not seem dangerous. And yet, according to our records, they were considered such a threat that they were banished to the dead zones of space. Records that have been deliberately corrupted. Tolmec reminded him. The humans were brought to Volanthos Prime within 3 days. Commander Santos, Dr. Park, and Lieutenant Cole were presented before the full Galactic Council. Hundreds of alien species filled the great chamber, all staring at the three small beings in the center of the floor. Santos looked around at the assembly. She saw creatures of every shape and size. Some floated in water spheres like Tolmec. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some glowed with internal light. And all of them were looking at her as if she were a ghost. You are the descendants of the exiled? Vethner asked. If you say so, Santos replied. We have legends of a great injustice from long ago, but the details were lost. We built our civilization in what you call the dead zones. We did not know anyone else was out here. Your species was supposed to die, another counselor said. This one was reptilian, with cold eyes and a harsh voice. The quarantine zone has no habitable worlds. Dr. Park stepped forward. We made them habitable. We learned to terraform. We learned to build stations and colonies. We adapted. A murmur went through the chamber. Tolmec made a note. Humans had survived for 800,000 years in conditions that should have killed them within a generation. This was remarkable. Vethner raised a limb for silence. The question before this council is simple. Do we enforce the ancient exile, or do we investigate why these beings were banished in the first place? The reptilian counselor, Inquisitor Jalvex, spoke immediately. The law is clear. Exile is eternal. These humans must be returned to their dead zone. Santos met his cold eyes without flinching. Before you send us back, do you not want to know what crime we committed? Because we would very much like to know ourselves. Tolmec took this moment to speak. High Speaker, I must inform the Council that the original exile records have been tampered with. The evidence against humanity was deliberately destroyed. Silence fell over the chamber. Vethner looked at the humans, then at his fellow counselors, then at the ancient walls of the chamber that had witnessed so many judgments. Someone wanted humanity forgotten, the High Speaker said slowly. The question is why? No one had an answer. But in the silence, Santos felt something she had not expected. She felt hope. After 800,000 years, someone was finally asking the right questions. The holding cells on Volantos Prime were comfortable by galactic standards. Commander Lyra Santos had a bed, a window that showed the stars, and food that was strange but edible. But she was still a prisoner, and she did not like it one bit. Dr. Kevin Park sat cross-legged on the floor of his cell, reading through a datapad that Archivist Tolmec had given him. The Voisin had taken a personal interest in the human case and had provided them with as much historical information as he could find. It does not make sense, Park said through the communication link between their cells. According to these records, humanity was a minor species when we were exiled. We had only been traveling between stars for 300 years. We had no advanced weapons. We had no empire. Why would the Council consider us such a threat? Lieutenant Hannah Cole was doing push-ups in her cell, keeping her body ready for whatever might come next. Maybe they were afraid of what we could become. Look at us now. We survived 800,000 years in the dead zones. We have a fleet. We have dozens of colony worlds. Maybe they saw our potential and got scared. Santa shook her head. That does not fit either. The Council does not exile species for potential. They exile them for actions. We did something. I just wish we knew what. The door to her cell opened, and Tolmec floated in with his water sphere. His transparent skin flickered with colors that Santos had learned meant excitement. I have found something, the archivist said. It took me 3 days of searching through corrupted files and damaged archives, but the first found a fragment of the original exile record. He projected a hologram into the air. It showed a document written in an ancient form of the common galactic language. Most of it was unreadable, but a few phrases stood out. Refuse direct order from the Council, Park read aloud. Unauthorized rescue mission. Species designated Kelthanir. Kelthanir, Santos repeated. I have never heard of them. Who were they? Tolmec's colors shifted to a deep blue, which Santos had learned meant sadness. They were a peaceful species who lived near the galactic core. 800,000 years ago, their sun began to die. The Council calculated that saving them was not worth the resources. All species were ordered to withdraw from Kelthanir space and let them perish. That is horrible, Cole said, stopping her exercises. That is policy, Tolmec replied. The Council must make difficult decisions for the good of the galaxy. Sometimes species are lost. It is the way of things. But humanity did not accept that, Park said slowly. We tried to save them anyway. That is what the fragments suggest. Humanity launched an unauthorized rescue mission. You defied a direct order from the Galactic Council. That is why you were exiled. Santos sat down heavily on her bed. 800,000 years. Her people had been banished to die in the dead zones of space for 800,000 years. And their crime was trying to save innocent lives. What happened to the Kelthanir? She asked. Did they die? Tolmec's colors flickered. According to official records, yes. They perished when their sun collapsed. But Commander, I must tell you something. Official records can be wrong. I have learned that lesson well in the past few days. The next morning, Santos and her crew were brought before the Council again. This time, the chamber was even more crowded. Word had spread that the ancient exile of humanity might have been unjust, and species from across the galaxy had come to witness the proceedings. Elder Council of Vethaner called the session to order. We have gathered new evidence regarding the exile of species 7412, known as humanity. Archivist Tolmec will present his findings. Tolmec floated to the center of the chamber and projected the document fragments for all to see. He explained what they had discovered. The murmurs from the assembled species grew louder with each revelation. Inquisitor Zhalvax stood, his reptilian eyes cold with anger. This changes nothing. Humanity defied a direct order from the Council. The punishment was appropriate. The punishment was death, Santos said, her voice cutting through the noise. You sent us to a region of space with no habitable worlds and expected us to die. That is not justice. That is murder. You did not die, Zhalvax replied. That is your own fault. Our own strength, Cole corrected him. We survived because we refused to give up. Just like we refused to give up on the Kelthanir. A new voice entered the conversation. Governor Samuel Wright had arrived on a transport from New Dawn, the largest human colony world. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, and he carried himself with the dignity of one who had led his people through hard times. High Speaker, Wright said, I bring greetings from the United Human Colonies. We have maintained oral histories for all the millennia of our exile. We always knew that a great injustice had been done to our ancestors, but we never knew the details. Now, thanks to Archivist Tolmec, we finally understand. He paused and looked around the chamber. Our ancestors tried to save innocent lives. They saw a species dying and could not stand by and watch. For this act of compassion, we were condemned to death. But we did not die. We grew stronger. And now, after 800,000 years, we ask only one thing, the truth. Ambassador Kira Bennett stepped forward. She was a younger woman with sharp features and a sharper mind. Wright had chosen her specifically for this mission because she could negotiate with anyone. We do not seek revenge, Bennett said. We do not seek compensation. We only want to know the full story of what happened 800,000 years ago. And we want to know if the Kelthanir truly died, or if something else happened. Bethaner leaned forward. What do you mean? Dr. Park spoke up. High Speaker, the records say the Kelthanir died when their sun collapsed. But our ancestors launched a rescue mission. Even if they saved only a few thousand individuals, those survivors could have rebuilt their population over 800,000 years. Has anyone actually checked to see if the Kelthanir still exist? The chamber fell silent. Tolmec's colors shifted rapidly. He had not considered this possibility. Zhalvax made a harsh sound. This is absurd. The Kelthanir are extinct. The records are clear. The records were also clear that humans were too dangerous to live, Santos replied. And yet here we stand. Perhaps your records are not as reliable as you think. Perhaps your records are ink. Bethaner made his decision. We will send an expedition to the Kelthanir Dead Zone. A joint team of council observers and human representatives will investigate. If there is any chance that the Kelthanir survived, we must know. Zhalvax protested, but he was overruled. The council voted in favor of the expedition by a wide margin. Too many species were curious now. Too many questions had been raised as the session ended. Santos found herself standing beside Tolmec. Thank you, she said, for believing us, for looking for the truth. Tolmec's colors shifted to a warm gold. Commander, I have spent 600 years studying the past. I have learned that history is written by those in power, and power does not always tell the truth. Your people were wronged. It is time to set things right. Santos looked out at the stars through the great windows of the chamber. Somewhere out there, in the dead zones of space, her people waited for news. Somewhere out there, the Kelthanir might still exist. And somewhere out there, the truth was waiting to be found.